Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you today. It is a privilege to be able to stand here before you and have a voice to speak out on this devastating issue of gender-based violence. I am aware of the hopes of survivors as I stand here, of those in the church in moving forward on this issue. And I hold that responsibility heavy, and I pray that I will be faithful to the broken heart of God over gender-based violence and convey our role in bringing it to an end, and also what our churches can do. I'm also aware in a room of this size that for some of you this will be a trigger moment, a reminder of your own experience of violence. For some of you it might be a defensive reaction, and for maybe others an uncomfortable reminder of your own perpetration of violence. Wherever you are at with this subject, I hope that you will let the barriers down, and I hope that you will hear what is being said. We know it's a difficult subject. And on the fact that it's a difficult subject, we have a National Domestic Violence Helpline number, 0808 2000 24/7. It's easy to remember, 08, repeat it, 08. It was formed in the year 2000 and it's open 24 hours, 7 days a week. 0808 2000 247. At the start of this, I wanted to give opportunity to hear the voice of a survivor, because they are important. Charlotte, not her real name, I've changed it, has given me permission to share her own story. Charlotte was a young Christian woman when she ended up being abused by a man named Craig, who she was in a relationship with. It lasted 6 years. What started off as seemingly really romantic gestures, such as the need to always be close to Charlotte, gradually escalated into manipulative and controlling behaviour, like limiting the amount of communication she had with her family and friends, and insisting that she had her phone with her at all times so that he could contact her. Craig's desire to control Charlotte and their relationship got worse until he was emotionally and physically abusing her. One time, he hit her over the back of the head and then profusely apologised and said he would never do it again. Because, of course, he did. In fact, the physical abuse, including rape, became so frequent and extreme that when Charlotte finally summed up the courage and will to leave Craig, she had to undergo 5 months of intensive physiotherapy simply to get her limbs to work again, and had several months of post-traumatic stress disorder counselling. The sad and the shocking truth is that Charlotte's story is by no means rare. However, there is a common view that domestic abuse and violence against women only occurs within certain social groups and to certain kinds of women, and perhaps not in our church, perhaps that one down the road, but not in our church, and most definitely not to Christians. Recalling her experience, Charlotte told us, "There was no actual hostility in the church, but I felt it was just too much to try and talk about the abuse, as I felt that nobody would understand, that people would be wanting to know all of the details and think that I was exaggerating the severity of the abuse." So as we move forward and look at some of the statistics around abuse, I hope that we would hold Charlotte's experience in our hearts. And each one of the statistics that I'm about to show you is a person made and reflected in the image of God. So what is gender-based violence? Well, the United Nations describes it as violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual or psychological harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, arbitrary deprivations of liberty, whether occurring in public or private life. The United Nations in 2007 released a devastating statistic, and one that breaks my heart. More women between the ages of 15 and 44 are more likely to be maimed or die due to male violence than through war, cancer, malaria or traffic combined. That's devastating. That's life-destroying, and something that is wholly and utterly preventable. Domestic violence is the largest form of abuse of women worldwide, irrespective of region, culture, ethnicity, education, class or religion. In the UK, 1 in 4 women will suffer abuse in her lifetime. Now think about how many women in your church there are. If we divided that figure by 4, how many women in our churches could that be? How many of them are suffering in silence due to the shame and the stigma that surrounds that issue in our churches? At Restored, we call that the toxic 3S combination: the shame, the stigma, and the silence. 2 women a week are killed in the UK by their partner or former partner. So when we think of the phrase, why doesn't she just leave, which we get asked, actually leaving is one of the most dangerous times for a woman to leave a relationship. It's the time she can get killed. So we need to be sure that we make safety plans. In 2013, Restored did a survey in conjunction with Christianity magazine. Now, it was an indicative survey, it was self-selecting, so it's not an academic survey. We had 443 people respond to that. And as you can see, 77% of those were women, 80% were educated to over degree level, and 97% were churchgoers. But with those provisos that it was self-selecting, and it's not academic, I just want to show you these indicative results. And really what we aim to do with this is just to show that violence is in our churches. 19% had experienced a partner refusing to accept no for an answer to sex. That's sexual violence. That's rape. 16% had experienced physical harm, 40% intimidation. 16% agreed that domestic violence takes place because women don't submit to their husbands. Clearly, there's some work to do in our churches. And yes, men are abused too. 1 in 6 men are abused in the UK. Again, we think about the numbers in our churches, how many men are speaking out on the issue, how many men are actually receiving the help and the support that they need. Men are more likely to call the police and press charges. Men are less likely to drop those charges. However, when we get over 4 incidences of abuse, 89% of the abuse is male violence towards women. 89%. We may not like these facts, yet we have to face the facts that the majority of gender-based violence is male violence towards women. So why talk about it now? It was last debated at Synod 10 years ago, but actually we need to reflect the changing context in which we live. We heard last year I was able to represent the Church of England at the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women, and the agreed conclusions there, which we lobbied on, was the inclusion of churches, or in the United Nations language, religious institutions in the response to violence against women. That is in there, and we need to be able to take responsibility for outworking that at a structural level, but also at a local level in our churches. We had the Primates letter in 2011 on gender-based violence. We have the Anglican Consultative Council Resolution 15.7 on gender-based violence, and the Foreign Secretary's Preventing Sexual Violence Initiative, of which we have a Church of England representative on the advisory board. A new stalking law was introduced last year, and we have the 5 marks of mission that seek to transform unjust structures of society and to challenge violence of every kind and pursue peace and reconciliation. And noting that the Church of England is a founder member of the We Will Speak Out coalition to end sexual violence. And there's also an increasing recognition of online abuse. So all of these make it important that we focus on ending abuse, and also that abuse still exists today. So what do we know? That all gender-based violence is wrong and must stop. Scripture can't be used to justify violence. That the church has an answer and can be a part of that solution, and that men and women working together can end violence against women, and the time to act is now. And there's plenty that we can do at the local church level. At the basic level, put information out in our churches put stuff behind the toilet doors for getting help and support where it's safe to access that support. We can get trained. We can link into our local service providers and support people to the professional services that are available in our local communities. And at a more engaged level, maybe linking in with the local refuge, making sure that we have those professional boundaries in place. We can discuss it at our PCC committees, educate ourselves and get rid of the myths of abuse. We can have a charter for churches teaching our sermons. There's lots of stuff that we can do in our local services. We can promote healthy relationships. We can pray. We can join First Man Standing and the White Ribbon campaign that the Bishop of Aston has joined. And some examples of what churches have been doing. There's been some great work going on. I start with my own church, St Stephen's Twickenham, who has put up the toilet door posters and have information available at the back of the churches, and we're moving forward about an action plan to go forward. Last year, I was able to train 19 vicars across the Diocese of Durham and leave them with an action plan going forward to implementing their own diocese. Coventry Cathedral, one of the first to get trained. Ending gender-based violence is all of our responsibility, and we all need to take action to bring it to an end. The culture of silence and complicitness needs to be broken. It takes all of us playing our part. Perhaps we even need to redefine courage. Courage is challenging your colleague and your friend and perhaps your family member when it would be easier to stay silent rather than speak up. We need to stand up and break the silence. In finishing, I hope that we will all make a renewed commitment to ending gender-based violence, remembering the voices of Charlotte, who so often don't get that voice, who often get silenced in our churches for fear of the stigma and the shame associated with abuse. And I pray that men perpetrating the abuse will stop and live transformed lives. May it be so in our churches and in our families. Thank you.